I'm Dana Healy, and you're listening to Cities Speak. Nathan Zacharias is the project manager for the Minnesota Speed Test Initiative. He's been with the Minnesota Rural Broadband Coalition for 3 years and currently serves as their government relations liaison. His previous experience includes work at the Minnesota State Senate as well as the U.S. Senate in Washington, D.C. He considers expanding broadband one of the most important issues facing the state in the coming months and years. Nathan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So, can you give us a high level? What is the Minnesota Broadband Speed Test Initiative?
Of course. So, the Minnesota Speed Test Initiative really is a project that asks people from every community in our state to take a 30-second speed test that measures the quality of their home internet connection. It's an effort by the Minnesota Rural Broadband Coalition to find out exactly what broadband service looks like throughout our state.
So, can you walk us through how this speed test works?
It's really quite simple, actually. You log on to our website, and this can be done from a computer, from a tablet, or even a smartphone. You plug in your address, your monthly internet cost, and click run the test. And of course, there's also an option to select if you don't have internet access at your home. So the test automatically measures your download and upload speed. You don't have to plug that information in or even know it. And it also tells us who your service provider is, which is really important. So once the test is done, our system, it logs the results and generates a dot on our map of the state of Minnesota for your test. I'm going to throw a couple numbers that are really important at you here. So our test is based on the state broadband speed goal that says everyone in the state should be connected to 25 megabits per second download and 3 megabits per second upload within the next 2 years. So, what does that mean for our speed test? If your speed matches or exceeds that, you get a green dot. Anything between 10 megabits per second and 25 megabits per second, you get a yellow dot. And anything under 10 megabits per second gets a red dot. And of course, if you have no service at all at your home, you get a black dot.
So, as people are executing this test, how long is it open for that people can participate?
So there's two answers to that. The first is we have up to a year to complete the work on this speed test. That's how long we're partnering with our tech company that's helping us run this. But ideally, we'd like to see folks take this test within the next 3 or 4 months. We've got a legislative session coming up. We know that counties and cities and townships are determining their annual budgets in this fall. And so we'd like to get this data and information in front of those important decision makers before the end of the year.
So, once those decision makers are armed with this data, what can be done? So, is it it's a legislation, or do we work with uh, cable providers and internet providers to build on infrastructure?
Yeah, a little of all of the above. So our intention is to share, once we've completed the work, our intention is to share our maps and data with community leaders so they can work, just like you said, with internet service providers to expand broadband networks in their communities. Now, what they'll be able to do with this information is say, here's a map that shows exactly where we're lacking service. Let's make a plan together to get service to these areas. Now, whether that's a grant from the state government, whether that's a county initiative on their own to do it, or even a township investment, that's up for the communities to decide because we know that every community has a different solution for how to build out broadband in our state. And we think that our map and the speed test initiative are just another tool in the toolbox for communities to use.
So, are you seeing common patterns? Because it is related to rural cities, but I also saw on the map that there's a lot of cities. I mean, the whole map is the whole state. Are you seeing a lot of rural towns not being connected as quickly?
Right, you're exactly right. The further out from the Twin Cities metro and regional centers like St. Cloud or Rochester you get, the less likely it is for you to have service. Now, the state estimates currently that about 20% of rural Minnesotans lack access to the bare minimum speeds we talked about earlier, which is 25 download by 3 upload. And that's the FCC's bare minimum. Like, if you don't meet that, you don't have broadband. And we're seeing patterns emerge. Of course, we want to wait until all the data is in to make any strong conclusions, but the patterns you might think are emerging, they're showing up. Rural areas, sparsely populated areas, um, those places, we're seeing a lot of red dots, we're seeing a lot of black dots, and that's something that we've known is the case, but we finally have, and we'll have more once this is done, we'll have the data to prove that, to really show once and for all where the discrepancies in access are in our state.
So, why is this important, especially in this COVID-19 climate right now? Why do people need to go and take this test?
So we know that, well, I should say we've heard anecdotes, hundreds upon hundreds of anecdotes about folks going to McDonald's or a library or a church or a co-op to get access to internet. And we find, as a coalition, we find that just completely unacceptable. Um, and that's even more unacceptable in the current global pandemic, where most of us, if it's possible, are working from home, we're learning from home, we're even socializing from home. We're seeing Zoom happy hours for people just to feel like they can get together, things like that. And that's just not possible unless you have a strong internet connection. That's just the bottom line.
So, what is your organization doing, or are you just the data collectors about advocating for broadband expansion?
Of course, yeah. The coalition has been around for about 5 or 6 years, and this has been a project that they've been interested in launching for quite a while, but just didn't quite have the way to do it. We knew these issues were out there. We knew that our current broadband maps weren't quite telling us the whole story. Um, but in the meantime, our coalition goes to the state legislature every year and advocates to fully fund the border to border broadband infrastructure grant program. That's our primary goal. It's a program that is considered by folks around the country as the premier program of its kind. Now, it's what you would consider a classic American public-private partnership, where the state has said, we know there are hard to serve areas, and we know that the business case isn't always there for the providers or cable companies, telcos, whoever it might be. The business case just doesn't make sense. Some of these are sparsely populated areas where it's incredibly expensive. I'm thinking of places up on the Iron Range where you have to drill through bedrock to lay a cable.
Mm.
Or even in southwestern Minnesota, where you might have one farm on a mile block or even less than that. So the state has said, through this grant program, we'll pick up 50% of the project costs, or I should say up to 50% of the project cost, and then community and private funds would make up the other half of that. And as I said, this is the premier funding model of its kind. We have many other states across the country that have modeled their program after ours, but the problem is it's never been fully funded. Even over all these years, the funding level has just not been there. And so our job as an organization is to go to the Capitol and to convince lawmakers that this is worth funding and it's worth fully funding. Like I said, we have 2 years to get everybody in the state connected to 25 down by 3 up. And we've got a lot of work left to do on that. So there's a lot of hard decisions at the legislature that need to be made. We know the state's in tough shape after the pandemic hit us, but we think broadband is one of the most important issues facing the state. And I don't see any reason why not funding it is an option.
So where can our listeners and viewers go to take the test?
Our website is MN Rural Broadband Coalition.com/speed test. It's as simple as that. You go to the website and, as I described earlier, take the test, fill out the information. I will add too that if you can't access the internet at all at home, if you have chosen or can't afford to have a smartphone, anything like that, you can call a phone number and I will personally help you get the test taken. And that phone number is 715-222-2824. And I'll make sure that we get your dot on our map.
Thank you so much for joining us today and educating us about the Minnesota Broadband Speed Test Initiative. We really appreciate your hard work.
Thanks so much for the opportunity.
We've been speaking to Nathan Zacharias, the project manager for the Minnesota Speed Test Initiative. If you enjoy hyper-local information about your city and your community, subscribe to our weekly e-blast to keep in touch. You've been listening to City Speak. If you've enjoyed the show, please like, follow, and share us on social media at CTV North Suburbs. Thanks.